Britain's so-called moral compass, once a point of national pride, now appears to have spun disastrously off course. In a move unprecedented in modern British history, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Dame Sukara, delivered a direct and damning judicial sanction against Prime Minister Keir Starmer. The catalyst? A cascade of investigations that have unearthed what many are calling a profound and unforgivable betrayal of the public trust. Did you know that over 95% of our viewers aren't subscribed to the channel? We totally get it, life gets busy, and sometimes it's easy to forget. But here's the thing, subscribing is completely free, and it really helps us keep creating the content you enjoy. So why not hit that subscribe button and join our community? It only takes a second, but it makes a world of difference to us. Thank you for your support. Across the length and breadth of the nation, Britons watched in disbelief, televisions flickering in living rooms, radios buzzing in taxis, phones lighting up with breaking news alerts, as the very foundations of Westminster trembled. In a system long criticized for shielding its own, it was a rare sight, the establishment holding itself to account. And at the heart of it all stood Dame Sukara, a figure of towering intellect and moral clarity, a woman whose very name commands respect in the British legal tradition. Dame Sukara moved swiftly and decisively. She trained her formidable legal sights on Starmer himself, exposing a web of questionable tax declarations, clandestine financial dealings, and ethical breaches that struck at the very heart of public life. For months, the walls of Parliament had echoed with hushed rumors of undisclosed donations, secretive investment portfolios, and favors granted behind closed doors. Yet few dared believe the whispers could bring down a man once held up as the paragon of political virtue. Now, however, the dam had broken. And the force of the revelations was staggering. Britain's most senior judge did not simply issue a polite rebuke. She unleashed the full weight of judicial condemnation, accusing the Prime Minister of betraying the public's trust and hiding behind a carefully constructed moral facade, while allowing political and financial rot to take root behind the scenes. These were no trivial matters of oversight. They struck at the very legitimacy of governance. Keir Starmer, the man who once styled himself as the ethical alternative to years of conservative turmoil, had built his political identity on the sacred pillars of transparency, accountability, and integrity. Yet behind the well-rehearsed speeches and polished public image, a troubling alternative reality had been quietly unfolding. His recently published tax return for the 2023-24 financial year presented a seemingly clean narrative, an income of £15,255, with £5,418 paid in taxes. At first glance, a modest, almost humble figure. But when investigative journalists and forensic accountants began to peel back the layers, they found thousands of pounds in allowances that simply didn't add up. These were not innocent clerical errors. Buried within the paperwork were luxury suits, bespoke clothing, and designer accessories, personal gifts from Lord Wad Ali, Labour's largest financial backer, and a pivotal figure in shaping the party's public image. Initially disguised as office expenses, these indulgences only came to light after relentless media pressure forced Starmer to admit their true nature. The revelation cracked open a door that many now fear leads to an entire labyrinth of deeper scandals. If this was Starmer's version of full disclosure, one could only imagine what remained hidden. These were not benign gifts exchanged among friends, they were deliberate investments in political capital, wrapped in fine cloth, and stitched with the expectation of influence. Since 2019, Lord Ali has reportedly bestowed over £39,000 worth of luxury goods upon Starmer and his wife. Such extravagant generosity raises uncomfortable questions about loyalty, influence, and the price of political favour in modern Britain. Was this the politics of a new, cleaner Labour, or merely the old politics of patronage dressed up in Savile Row suits? And now, the British public, once content to place faith in soothing political rhetoric, has awoken. They are watching. They are questioning. And many are concluding, with a growing sense of anger, that the promises of a better, more honest politics have been broken. The financial discrepancies did not end there. During the 2022-23 fiscal year, Starmer paid close to £100,000 in taxes, a figure that might seem respectable until compared to former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who, despite having far greater personal wealth, paid over £1.5 million between 2019 and 2023. How could a man who championed himself as a voice for the common people justify benefiting from vague perks, surging land values on family property, and royalties from books whose sales figures remain suspiciously undisclosed? The questions only grew sharper when journalists began probing Starmer's December 2022 land sale. Media estimates placed the value of the property at nearly £400,000. Yet Starmer declared only £275,000 in gains. Was this simply an oversight, or something far more calculated? Dame Sukara and her judicial investigators, it seems, were not convinced by the official explanations. Behind the scenes, they had been meticulously compiling evidence for months. They uncovered worrying patterns, delays in asset declarations that blurred the already tenuous boundary between personal enrichment and public duty, persistent whispers of undisclosed foreign investments tied to billionaires controlling critical British infrastructure and media outlets, connections that allegedly stretched back to Starmer's earliest days in politics. Yet, publicly, Starmer maintained his pose of moral superiority. He clung to the defense of technical compliance, insisting he had adhered strictly to accounting standards and regulatory frameworks. But therein lay the very essence of the scandal, the growing gap between what is legal and what is right. Politicians often weaponize legality to shield moral failure, a sleight of hand that fools fewer and fewer voters as the truth continues to surface. And Starmer was not the only Labour figure drawn into the widening scandal. Rachel Reeves, Labour's shadow chancellor and Starmer's ideological confidant, faced intense scrutiny after revelations that she had enjoyed a lavish, cost-free stay in one of Lord Wood Ali's luxury New York apartments, replete with designer gifts and a billionaire-hosted New Year's Eve celebration. Only weeks later, Reeves returned to Britain to proclaim her solidarity with working-class families struggling to survive under the weight of economic crisis. The disconnect could not have been starker. Angela Rayner, another key ally, faced her own share of controversy. Her declarations of financial integrity appeared increasingly hollow in the light of swirling rumors about undeclared gifts, private sponsorships, and questionable affiliations. Each revelation chipped further away at the crumbling facade of Labour's self-proclaimed moral revival. Together, these unfolding stories painted an alarming picture: a privileged political class dressing itself in the borrowed robes of working-class empathy while quietly serving the interests of the wealthy elite. Dame Sukara's final judgment came swiftly, with neither political niceties nor legal hedging to soften its blow. Her words, delivered in a packed courtroom and broadcast across the nation, were scathing, a direct condemnation of not just Starmer's financial misconduct, but of a broader culture of hypocrisy festering at the heart of British politics. Never before in living memory had a sitting Prime Minister faced such damning judicial scrutiny. And never before had the gap between the image of public service and the reality of personal gain been laid so bare. The mounting evidence, tax discrepancies, hidden investments, financial improprieties, has not merely damaged Starmer's personal reputation. It has struck a grievous blow to the soul of a nation already weary of broken promises and political deceit. As the dust settles and the investigations deepen, one question now hangs over Britain like a dark and gathering storm. If the man who promised to clean up politics cannot be trusted, who can? And if trust in leadership is lost, what then remains? Keir Starmer now stands under the harshest glare of legal scrutiny, his credibility collapsing under the weight of public suspicion, and the dark specter of an impending courtroom battle looming ever closer. This is no fleeting scandal, no minor blemish that a few carefully crafted statements might wash away. This is a rupture deep, devastating, and potentially fatal to both his political career and to the fragile image of change and renewal that the Labour Party has spent years painstakingly trying to cultivate. Yet Starmer's personal fall from grace is only half the story. Hovering behind the scenes is Lord Wood Ali, the silent power broker, the architect of much of Labour's media strategy, now unceremoniously barred from Downing Street. His influence may have been clipped, but the symbolism is far more lasting. A major donor showers the leader with lavish gifts. The leader accepts. And the public, once again, is left staring at the ruins of shattered promises. Keir Starmer rose to prominence on pledges of moral integrity, radical transparency, and a fresh, untainted political culture. He offered himself not merely as a new leader, but as the very antidote to everything that had poisoned British politics. Yet in the end, it is not the Conservative opposition bringing him to his knees. It is not partisan mudslinging, nor media spin. It is the relentless, merciless truth. Hypocrisy, deceit, and corruption do not belong to one party alone. They flourish wherever power festers without proper accountability, wherever image is allowed to triumph over substance. And now, for the first time, a judge has voiced aloud what the nation has been whispering for months in living rooms, in pubs, across social media: enough is enough. Yes, Starmer's tax records show he paid nearly £100,000 in 2023. But the deeper you dig, the more troubling the picture becomes. The saga is far from over. In fact, it is only just beginning. A political earthquake is still unfolding, its tremors growing stronger by the day. Starmer now faces an official investigation for suspected tax fraud, with investigators honing in on suspicious transactions, glaring inconsistencies in his financial declarations, and murky explanations that seem to raise more questions than they answer. Labour's official communications machinery has scrambled into overdrive, issuing carefully worded statements designed to reassure a jittery public. They claim Starmer paid £44,430 in income tax, almost half his supposed annual liability. But even this effort to project transparency has only fueled fresh doubts. For if Starmer's declared income rose significantly due to luxury gifts and outside earnings, why, then, did his income tax payments seemingly decline in 2024? Where exactly is the missing money? How can a leader, so quick to denounce others for financial misdeeds, offer such a hazy, incomplete account of his own? There's more. Starmer also reported paying £52,688 in capital gains tax following the sale of a parcel of family land. He claimed the proceeds would fund care for rescued animals, an emotive appeal designed, perhaps, to soften the blow of financial scrutiny. Yet troubling discrepancies emerged almost immediately. The land, by press estimates, sold for around £400,000. But Starmer declared only £275,139 in profit. That leaves a yawning gap of over £124,000, unaccounted for, unexplained, quietly brushed aside. Where did that money go? Why has no independent body been empowered to demand a full audit? Why have Britain's supposed watchdogs been so slow to bare their teeth? The comparisons to former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak are unavoidable and damning. In 2022 alone, Sunak's tax bill dwarfed Starmer's. And while Sunak has never claimed to be a champion of working-class Britain, Starmer positioned himself precisely as that, the honest broker, the people's advocate. Yet here he is, paying just £54,718 in tax during 2023 to 24, despite receiving thousands of pounds worth of luxury goods from a billionaire benefactor. The hypocrisy is staggering. And it cuts to the heart of public anger. Since 2020, Starmer's total tax payments reportedly amount to around £218,000. But even that figure now lies under a cloud of suspicion. Past disclosures reveal that he paid £118,580 on £359,720 of income over 2 years, a figure that includes £21,000 earned in legal fees prior to 2020, and £85,000 in property profits shared with his sister. Despite considerable earnings from both professional work and real estate, Starmer somehow managed to minimize his overall tax burden. Was it legal? Perhaps. Was it ethical? Increasingly, many Britons think not. Is this, they ask, the transparency he promised? Or is it merely a more polished, better-spoken version of the very same elite behaviors the public thought they were finally voting to end? And the questions don't stop there. The land Starmer sold in 2022 had been purchased decades earlier by his parents, a sentimental investment intended to support animal welfare. Early appraisals pegged its value at close to £400,000. Yet when Starmer came to declare the sale, a significant portion of that value seems to have vanished into thin air, smoothed away with the kind of carefully drafted PR statements that sound convincing, but crumble under the slightest scrutiny. The numbers simply do not add up. And with each passing week, more and more people are waking up to the reality. They are not merely asking for explanations. They are demanding full disclosure. They are demanding justice. Starmer's carefully cultivated image, the moral reformer, the man who would purge British politics of its endemic sleaze, is now crumbling under the relentless weight of cold, hard facts. The very behaviors he vowed to eradicate are the same ones he now stands accused of perpetuating. The nation is watching, and it is growing angrier by the day. For the Labour Party, the stakes could not be higher. Once riding high on promises of sweeping change, the party now faces the real risk of squandering the fragile trust it so painstakingly rebuilt. Not because of an external enemy. Not because of a smear campaign. But because of betrayal from within. When a party that claims to represent hope and renewal falls into the same patterns of secrecy and privilege, the betrayal cuts twice as deep. This is no longer just about Keir Starmer. It is about the soul of British politics itself. And as the investigations deepen, as more revelations emerge, and as the courtroom battles loom ever closer, one thing becomes increasingly clear. In the end, it wasn't the Tories, the tabloids, or the critics that brought Keir Starmer to the brink. It was the truth. And the truth, as it always does, demands its reckoning.